It's time for the Dugar Report. I just love that saying that. Michael-Shawn Dugar from The Athletic. You can follow him on X and Blue Sky at Mike Dugar. Ladies and gentlemen, he writes for The Athletic. He's the star, half star of the Seahawks Man-to-Man podcast, along with Chris Kidd. And he joins us every Thursday to talk a little Seahawks football. All right, Mike, I need to know, how was the injury report that came out yesterday and Wednesday? And as we look ahead now to the game on Sunday, good news, Geno was back, but then the bad news with the running backs, right?
Yeah. Bad news is that Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet didn't practice. Ken should practice Thursday, though. And then I would imagine Zach should too. I'm not quite too sure on that one, but hearing from Mike Macdonald, who's pretty much been a straight shooter on injuries as much as he can be, as much as an NFL coach is these days, seem pretty optimistic about Ken. And then, of course, Geno being out there is everything. No shade to Sam Howell, but we saw that Sunday night. Like we saw him come into the same situation, relatively speaking, that Geno came in 2021 when Russ broke his finger. And the difference couldn't have been more stark or drastic, whatever the word is there. So the best news of the week is that in what is now the biggest game of the season, at least to this point, Geno Smith should be there Sunday against Minnesota.
It was scary because there was a moment when he left that game last week, Mike, that, I thought this was going to be something that was going to knock him out for a while. It didn't look good initially. And especially when he walked off the field.
Yeah, when he went into the blue medical tent and then came out and walked to the locker room, that's when I was like, oh, damn. He was able, though, the good thing is able to walk there. I've seen enough guys get carted off where I'm like, okay, this is a wrap, the list is just long of guys who've been carted off, crying, towel over their head or whatever, and then you usually know that's over. If you can walk to the locker room, he was walking just fine, too, now with, help. There's a little optimism, but also it's just so late in the year. A 2-3 week injury is your season at this point. Something that high ankle sprain can knock a guy out for the year, because of the time of year we're in. So yeah, great news that he should be able to play. Because again, those snaps that Sam Howell was in there, that was not NFL football. That was not, at least not on the Seahawks part on offense.
Yeah, it was rough. The running back situation, okay, we did not participate right again there for Walker and then also Charbonnet. This is something new. It's an oblique, their injury for Zach Charbonnet. Was there any explanation how he ended up on it? I would assume this is a carryover from the game, right? It has to be.
Yeah, no explanation, just because the timing of the report comes out after, we talked to Mike Macdonald. I didn't really even peep that something was up with Zach until I saw him in the hallway. When I was walking to the locker room, I was like, everyone else is getting ready for practice. Why isn't Zach? And then you couldn't tell something was wrong with him, no limp or brace or anything, because sometimes there are just giveaways like that. I knew Rayshon Jenkins was going to go on IR, or that Stone Forsythe was, because they're walking through in street clothes with casts on their hands. I'm like, he can't play with that. So nothing like that for Zach, at least that I saw, but still not very clear whether he'll play. I would expect Ken Walker to go, and if not, though, to be honest, they all look comparable in this offense. Really, they don't run the ball anyway, but when they do, I feel like Kenny, Zach, and Ken, at least in Ryan Grubb's scheme, kind of a lot of the same guy, minus Ken's improv skills, really.
Yeah, and there's some. You're right. It's been a struggle, no matter what. Everyone when McIntosh has got in there. McIntosh at times has had some nice touches. Okay, so let's say Charbonnet doesn't play. Walker, let's cross our fingers. But let's just say he doesn't. We're talking it's Kenny McIntosh, and then it's who's the kid from Boise State? I'm blanking.
George Holani.
Holani, that's right.
Yeah, and then maybe someone listening to this might be called up as well. It might be open tryouts. They called up guys in December. They called up, what was that, Robert Turbin in 2019? Called up Marshawn in 2019 when they were so badly beaten up. Who knows? They called up Adrian Peterson a few years ago to have him on the roster at age whatever he was. They called Devin Hester in 2016. That was for returning, but. My first year here, they called Dwight Freeney He was like 37, so rushing the passer. Last year, Jason Peters. Some seasons, when I think about all those, they're fresh on my mind because sometimes I do just wonder, like, who is it gonna be next? What like future Hall of Famer on his last leg is gonna like put on a Seahawk jersey as his like final farewell to the NFL? Sometimes I selfishly wonder which one. I think this most recent, I'm wondering like, what would it take for like Aaron Donald, 39-year-old Aaron Donald or something like that to get a call from the Seahawks? Rush the passer for like a week and a half around here. That'd be hilarious.
Hey, how much? I know DK talked about it, but I wonder if some of the other players did. Obviously, last week, they just get dominated by Green Bay, run out of their own stadium, and then really something that we talked about last week. What was a crowd going to be like? We know what the Packers travel like. It's one of those teams that travels. They got fans everywhere. This paled. I mean, it made the Bills game almost obsolete of how many Packer fans were there, and then just frankly how loud they were. Metcalf talked about it this week, and obviously it bothered him. You get a sense from the other players that kind of hit home and resonated with them. That man, there was just a lot of the opposing other teams' fans in our building making more noise than our fans.
Yeah, I didn't get many guys to react to a post game other than Tyler Lockett, whose perspective I really wanted because he's been here the longest. Been here 10 years. So he knows, he's got just the context. And he told me after the game, he said it was way more than usual. It was louder than usual. He could feel the difference, so we weren't going crazy at home or for those of us who were there because it felt that way. You could hear "Go Pack Go" chants in the first quarter. I've never experienced anything like that. I've been covering the team since 2017. So to hear Tyler say, yeah, man, I mean, at the end of the day, we can't do anything about what fans do with their tickets. If we win, maybe they won't sell them. That's what he told me after the game. He's right. But I mean, just hearing him just acknowledge that, that we weren't crazy, or at least that me, because, I don't get the TV perspective. I could only go off what I'm hearing in the stadium. And I was like, this is crazy. You mentioned that Bills game. Like the Bills, there were probably as many Bills fans in week 8 as there were Packer fans. They just weren't as loud. That was the other thing. And, one of my really good friends is a Raider fan, and he was there in 2022. And when Josh Jacobs broke off that run in overtime to win the game, like that was probably the loudest I'd ever heard an opposing fan base. But that's the Raiders, and that was overtime. And their guy was running 80 yards free for the score. So you can kind of feel why they were so loud. It was the first quarter, Puck, and I could hear "Go Pack Go." I just couldn't. I couldn't imagine they would be that loud. I knew they would be that deep because I was hanging out with one of my friends who used to live here. He's from Milwaukee, diehard Packer fan, lives in D.C. He flew in for the game. So I was like hanging out with a Packer fan pregame, and I drove him up to the game so we could see all the other cheeseheads as we were walking up. I just didn't think that it would feel like a neutral site game. That had more of a feel of a bowl game at night than it did of a true Seahawks home game, and that was unlike anything I ever experienced. And I can't blame DK and Tyler for, they don't know the business side of it, so they're just like, "Yo, y'all selling tickets? What gives?" That's just not what we're used to around here.
You know what changes it though is don't get down 14-0.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah,
I mean, there's
just don't lose to the Giants. Don't lose to the Niners.
Players play a part in it, and again, I'm not laying blame at them. I'm not saying it's the players' fault, the team's fault. I'm just saying that. You shut them up if you don't give them anything to root about. But the problem is that however many Packer fans were in there, I don't know. They're clearly going to start making more noise because they did something that, Mike, I haven't seen. I can't remember the last time in an NFL game specifically where the teams won the toss and said, "Fuck it, we'll take it. Give us the ball." I mean, that just doesn't ever happen anymore.
Yeah, there was an arrogance to that game that I didn't feel in real time until I just didn't feel it in real time. But it was interesting talking to Leonard Williams after the game, and he is actually how I found out. Because I forget what I was doing during the coin toss. I'm not always paying attention, but he's who mentioned to me. He said, "Yeah, you can tell they had a plan. They took the ball, went right down the field, and scored. Like they had a plan. They knew what they were doing. And it was interesting that he, a veteran, was like took note of that. He was also a captain, so of course he remembered that they lost, that they won the coin toss. But he was just like, yeah, they chose to take the ball. That was noticeable. And then I watched the film of the game and just the replay of the broadcast that night, Sunday night when I got home. Matt LaFleur's first play of the game was the tunnel screen that the Seahawks have been killing teams on. all year. And I didn't peep that in real time. And then I saw it later and I was like, oh, there's all kinds of arrogance being exuded here from the Green Bay side of things. The fan base just added to it, but they really just owned that game. And you can tell they came in here planning to own it. For that to be your opening play, and I didn't do much, but for that to be your opening play, you take the ball in prime time, in Seattle, place where I can't remember the last time Green Bay won. That was just, yeah, that was a really bad look for Mike Macdonald's kind of his tenure here, like to start off like that, because that's an awful way to start. And now they only got one home game left. You lose this one. So even if you make the playoffs, it's just a bad look. And then if you don't make the playoffs, you got what until next preseason, next time you get people butts in seats, next scrimmage at Lumen. That's a long time if you just kind of limp into the offseason having dropped 2 straight games at home.
Hey, what do you think was the difference? I mean, it was a well-called game by LaFleur, and it was beautifully executed in the first 2 drives. I don't know. You tell me. Was it a step back for Mike Macdonald's defense, or was it, hey, that's just a really good offense over there with a really nice offensive line and a real nice young quarterback? This is just something this defense, as well as they have been playing, they just haven't seen this.
Yeah, a little bit. I also just think they executed really well. They got to give them credit for that. They moved really fast, which Leonard Williams also mentioned to me after the game. He's like, they were just hot. They were moving. We weren't set. And then Ernest Jones talked about it too. And you watched the film and like, yeah, Ernest is trying to tell Leonard to move to his left or his right, and the ball snapped. He's trying to get Byron Murphy set, and then the ball is snapped. So he's out of position. Byron's out of position. Everybody's out of position. So there was some of that. And I think just schematically, we got to remember Mike Macdonald is, I think, 37. This is only his 3rd year as a defensive coordinator in the NFL, I believe, 4th overall, if you include his time at Michigan. He just hasn't been doing this that long. So he is, as good as he is, susceptible to taking a little L to some more experienced guys. Now, Matt LaFleur ain't a little geezer or anything, but he has been doing this for some time. He's been around for a little bit. He's had success against a lot of different coordinators who come from a lot of different trees. He's coached in big time playoff games on the road, prime time, at home. So he's been around the block for a younger guy. So I just think Mike Macdonald took an L. He started off with an L, and that's gonna happen when you're as green as he is relative to some of his peers who are really good at calling plays, have good players, and that's going to happen. This is one of the Sunday night was one of those fears when you overhaul an experienced staff like Pete had, or get rid of a Pete. It's just you bring in all these new guys. These new guys can get out coached here and there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think what you touched on, and I think what Leonard Williams touched on, and also I think Ernest Jones highlighted as well, Mike, was I think it was a real effort. And I'm curious to see what Kevin O'Connell does on Sunday. The Vikings maybe do something similar. They got up to the line of scrimmage, as you just noted, with Williams said it and Jones said it. They got to the line of scrimmage, they snapped the ball, and they win. Because it's what you see almost with college offenses where they're waiting right till the defense sets up, they look over and they get the play, and then they call something else based on the defense they're seeing. I mean, that's what McDonald's been doing. He's been changing the play right before the ball is snapped to try and confuse the offense. Well, LaFleur saw that and just said, we're just going to go up there and snap the ball fast before they can even make an audible to what they're doing. So that will be interesting to see how McDonald now counters that, and we'll see if Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings try to do something similar.
Yeah, I think one of Mike Macdonald's messages or his mantras, every coach has their little slogans. One of his is we want to hold the pen last as the defense. They want to make that last call, that last check. And Matt LaFleur, excuse me, like, oh, you do, huh? Well, how about this? We're gonna step on the gas here, and I think they have a luxury of doing that to kind of spin it forward to Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings. They have the luxury of offensive line continuity. I think their same 5 has started, if most games together this season, if not all of them. So it's easier to do that and avoid operational penalties. You can go that fast without false starts, run all those screens without anyone ineligible downfield, get those plays off without holdings or things like that, which they did. They played clean too, which when some teams try to speed it up, that's what the issues you get into: bad snaps, false starts, procedural stuff. And the Packers can avoid that in a way that I don't know if the Vikings or damn near any team can, because of all the moving parts up front. Green Bay hasn't, I don't think, been impacted by that as much as other teams.
It's a hell of an offense coming into town too, as well with the Vikings. Obviously the season that Darnold's had, but I mean it's highlighted by those two wide receivers who are just excellent. I want to transition to the running game, but remind me to go back to, because again, there's another comment from Macdonald after the game talking about the running game that, people are I don't know if they're twisting the words, but they're looking, is there some type of conflict between Grubb and Mike Macdonald? I want to get back to that in a second, but we brought up the defense. We're talking about the Vikings and Addison and Jefferson and all the weapons that they have. What is going on with Riq Woolen? What's going on there? Because it just seems, he's lashing out a little bit at the fans. And again, I don't follow these guys, so I don't know what fans are saying to him. But again, I can just only imagine if there's something they have a bad game, they're calling him out. But that wasn't a good game, and his coach was honest about it. That wasn't his best effort. I mean, it wasn't. He's kind of feels like he's been up and down this year, Mike.
Yeah, he has, and it's unfortunate because one, he keeps doing it at home. I think he's given up like 6 touchdowns this year. I was just looking it up, and I think all of them are at home. I want to say so. I mean, that's just sometimes that just really burns you more than anything when you're just giving up touchdowns at the crib and everyone pays their money. They show up, they see you, and then you give up touchdowns. And 6 is by far more than anyone else on the team. It's actually 4th most in the league among corners right now. So that part is hurting him. And when you're not matching that with interceptions like a Marcus Peters would do or a Trayvon Diggs would do, like they'll give up a big one and then get a pick 6, right? So it kind of evens out. When you're not doing that, it hurts the optics, because when you're not getting thrown at because you covered so well, literally no one sees that. We don't care. We either see that it's a sack or they threw the ball somewhere else. But Mike Macdonald mentioned something on Wednesday where he said when Riq's locked in, he's one of the best. And when he's not locked in, that's where things can go awry. I'm paraphrasing. And that's exactly what it looks like. Because Riq, look at some of the people he's given up the touchdowns to. I was looking at this the other night as well. Demarcus Robinson of the Rams, twice. Keon Coleman, Wendell Robinson of the Giants. I think he's responsible for like a Dalton Kincaid touchdown against the Bills. And then Romeo Doubs the other night. These are not... I made sure to name which team some of these guys play for because it's not readily apparent. I'm not naming household names at receiver, and I think that's part of the issue too. No one wants to see you get beat, but I mean, you lose like a go ball to CeeDee Lamb. It does sting, but no one's calling you a scrub. You know what I mean? Jamar Chase gets you on a post route, like it stings, but it's not. No one's like, we can't pay that guy. Look at him, we can't cover Jamar Chase. So I think that's really hurting Riq right now too. It's just these lapses against like guys you shouldn't have the lapses against. That's where it's really unfortunate. And I think he's putting in perspective, I think, what Sherm was able to do on a play-by-play basis. Sherm never got bored with consistency. He never got bored with not getting targeted. He thought every snap the ball was getting thrown at him. Knowing good and goddamn well it probably wasn't because he was locking it down, but he had to have that mentality to avoid what kind of Riq is going on with. There's all these guys I named, Riq can cover them. Mike Macdonald's right. When Riq's locked in, he's fine. He's 6'4", good feet, great hands, amazing speed, usually good with his technique, not super handsy when the ball arrives. And some plays, he just forgets all of that, and that's got to be frustrating for the staff because that's 100% mental. There's no reason to think that Riq can't run with Christian Watson, and locate a deep ball like he couldn't on Sunday night. That type of stuff, it's 100% mental. I didn't get to talk to Riq this week, but I know the answer. It's mental, and the only way to really get the best version of Riq is to make sure every single snap he is imagining the ball is coming and acting accordingly.
What do you think? I'm asking both of us to speculate here. This is what we do anyways. I'm just speculating. Is a contract thing? Hey, he walks next year. It will be the last year of his deal. You make a decision on it. Is the frustration they haven't come to him already? I don't know. It just something just seems off with them. And you're right. There's just times where he looks like the lockdown Sherman version, and there's other times where ball on that sideline kind of go over his head. He's just kind of out of position, kind of looks up, and it just goes over. It goes over his arms, and then the PI, late in that, I think it was the first half. It's just, the personal foul penalty. All the things that we've kind of we've talked about. So I don't know. It's just been, it's been real interesting. And He comes off, Mike, a little bit to me, how I think testy he has been, that something else is going on we don't know about. And that's always the hard thing with athletes. I don't know what's going on in his personal life. I got no idea. Now I'm speculating big time here. That may be unfair. I'm just saying I don't know, but it has that vibe to it. To me.
I think another thing on top of that to remember about Riq is this is only his 5th year playing corner ever. So I think there are just going to be the consistency is not there sometimes because he's not consistently been playing this position. I do think that's part of it. And I don't think it would probably have to do with contract as much as like really just a lack of consistent focus because this game really tests that in particular. I'd say corners and linemen because they have to almost be flawless because that one play you give up is the one everyone remembers. Particularly for linemen. Because they can't get an interception or a scoop a fumble up either. So they just have to be perfect.
Yeah, you only talk about them when they screw up.
Yeah, because Riq, the other thing about Riq too, going back to the inexperience, like if you remember Puck in his rookie year, guys were complimenting him, but also saying like, man, he's playing really well, and he doesn't even know what he's doing yet, or like he doesn't even know quite yet how good he could be. Because they were like, he's playing well, but there's still so much to learn about the position. And, some of that is just recognizing situations, routes, different techniques. And I think he's still learning a lot of that stuff, on top of just being a really good player who gets targeted by some of the other team's best, usually who he stands up to. That's why I note that you look at him against some of these other guys. That's where I just think it's focus. Because if I could make you a cut up of him versus Devontae Adams versus Garrett Wilson versus Darnell Mooney versus Drake London, some of the players in the NFL he's gone against this year that are in the top 15 in receiving yards, and show you how Riq has played against them. But then it'll be like Demarcus Robinson 39-yard game winner in overtime on the tape, and you'd be like, well, Mike, I'm not paying that guy.
Yeah, because you know what I think it is? I just think it's he gets up for the big ones.
Yeah,
for the big wide receivers.
That's the human part of it too, unfortunately.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's human nature. It happens. But to your point earlier about Sherman, is like Sherman locked in on anyone. Sherman treated whoever it was. It didn't mean if the guy was a scrub or not. Like that's Jerry Rice. Every one of them.
Well, they were all scrubs to Sherm. Sherm was the big one in his mind. He was like, you're all scrubs to me, so I'm just going to treat you all like scrubs.
But treated them like I'm just going to ruin he came in with a mentality, and I get it. Sherman's a polarizing figure for a lot of people. But he came with his mentality was I'm going to embarrass you.
Yeah.
Every one of you, I'm going to embarrass you.
From the beginning too, his first ever start against the Bengals. He said AJ Green is a bunch of hype and bad routes
kicked in that game. That's the best part about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't remember what Green did in the game. But
he scored a touchdown, not on Sherm, but he did score once. And they, like you said, they lost by like 20 or something like that. It wasn't close. And Sherm was like, AJ's a bunch of hype and bad routes, and he kept that attitude forever. And that it's as much as like he got a little heat for that, a lot of heat actually. But that was part of what made him so good, and that's important. You need that kind of mentality sometimes when you're out on an island so much.
I think you have to have that mentality to play that position. I think you have to have it. I just think that guy's got to be like a boxer. You got to talk so much smack all the time, and then just be like, oh, whatever. So what? You got beat, you lost. I don't care. I'm still better than you. I just think you have to have that all the time. It's that position is just, I don't know. It's that. The best ones, the greatest ones at it, had that mentality all the time. I want to get to there's another quote comes after the game. And we read into it, and yada, 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 where Mike Macdonald says, just talking about the running game, we wanted to run it more going into the game for sure. We didn't get as many runs as we thought, partially because of circumstance, but there were some opportunities in the game that we both felt like runs, talk about Grubb, could have been better utilized. We've got to learn from those things, but we're on the same page on how we're calling games and all that, but absolutely we need to get our run game going. Are we convinced they're on the same page? I feel like we talk about this every single week. Do we just have to wait till the end of the season to figure out what they're going to do rather than do this every week?
I think they're on the same page on like Monday evening through Saturday afternoonish. That's my. I genuinely do believe that. I do think like when they're done, whenever Mike Macdonald last talks to Ryan Grubb and Aiden Durde, his defensive coordinator, they're all probably like, all right, ready, break, 1, 2, 3, team, go, and they're all fine. Everybody gets an orange slice and a high five, and we're good. Let's go beat them. Win for the Gipper, whatever. Like they're on the same page. But I think that in the heat of battle, Grubb kind of defaults and likes things that he just goes to the other side of the sheet more than maybe Mike would like, because there's runs and passes for every situation. 3rd and 1 runs, 3rd and 1 passes, 3rd and 19 passes, 3rd and 19 draw plays, sudden change plays, red zone, 4th down. Like the sheet has everything, I think, categorized differently based on the situation. You can do whatever in any spot. It's just up to the guy, So Mike's probably like, okay, cool. We have a run for every situation versus any front versus any down and distance. Cool. We also have passes for those situations too. What it's called when is up to Ryan. And I think his default is different in the heat of battle. It was very similar to Brian Schottenheimer, who they have a plan sometimes, but I think I remember in the Giants game in 2020, they lost to Colt McCoy in the Giants. There was no Daniel Jones. They didn't have Saquon in that game either. The whole week, they prepared all right, cool, we got this plan. We're going to run it down their throats. They play a bunch of too high safety stuff. Man, Russ hit one whole shot against cover 2 on the first drive and just kept throwing it the whole game. They just kept throwing it. Russ got sacked 5 times. They scored 10 points. They lost. It was embarrassing. And later, Shotty was like, yeah, no, I messed that up. I just abandoned the plan. We had a plan. It was a good one. And I deviated from it because you have the freedom to as the OC, and I do think they go into plans. They going back to Grubb and Mike. I'm sure they're on the same page going in, but Grubb's default is throw it. That is, yeah. He sees every situation as an opportunity to show off Geno's arm and get the ball to Jackson. And there's got to be more balance, because as we've seen, when there's not balance, this team just looks like one that plays a neutral site game at home.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting. Yeah, maybe this is just the year of themselves, getting to know each other and just kind of, going through that year and the balancing act of it. Coming in, man, this is an offense, Mike. What do you expect to see on Sunday? I mean, it's not technically a must-win, but it's pretty damn close.
I'm going to call it a must-win until the result of the Rams-Jets game changes my mind. Because I was crunching some numbers. If my math is right, I did all of the tiebreaker scenarios, assuming that the Rams go 2-0. They face the Jets and Cardinals over the next couple of weeks. If they go 2-0 and the Seahawks were to split these next 2 against the Bears and Vikings and then beat the Rams, so that's just a fancy way of getting to both teams at 10-7. It would get all the way down in that scenario to the 4th tiebreaker, which is strength of victory. Yeah. Strength of victory in particular. They would have it, and this game would swing it a lot because they would lose to a 12-2 Vikings team and then go beat a 4 and whatever the hell Bears team.
You want to lose if you're going to kick a game, lose to the Bears.
Correct. No, that's why I think this one is the must win, because without this, now you need the Rams to drop a game. You can win this, still drop the Bears game, and as long as you beat the Rams, which you have to do in every scenario. Like you said, if you're gonna drop one, if you're gonna just have a boo-boo or an owie or an out, in late in December, do it the day after Christmas. That's the day to do it. It is not on Sunday, because mathematically you basically give up the right to be in the driver's seat. I think if you lose this one, so I'm calling it a must win. I think the Jets game will conclude by kickoff of the game Sunday, so we'll know. Because I think they're playing at New York, so it's like a 10 a.m. Seattle game. So we'll know. So that's important. But until that game, I'm calling this a must-win. It is. Mathematically, it gets much tougher to make the playoffs if you lose to Minnesota.
All right, there he is. We'll find out. It's gonna be a wild scene there on Sunday. We'll see I'm going to tell you, fans, right now, there's gonna be another invasion. There is a ton of Viking fans
Tons.
Tons that live here. They've moved out here. I see them all the time. So be prepared for the Viking invasion coming to Lumen there on Sunday. You can follow Mike on Twitter and Blue Sky, Mike Dugar. You can read all of his work up at The Athletic. Of course, listen to him on all the platforms, the Seahawks Man-to-Man podcast with our guy Chris Kidd. What do we got on The Athletic right now? And then the episodes this week on the Seahawks Man-to-Man podcast.
Yeah, I did some numbers diving on the two receiver duos in this matchup. Really productive. Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. They're the second most productive duo in the NFL behind Jamar Chase and T. Higgins because Jamar's an alien. But then number 3 is DK and JSN. They're third in yards total right now. And if this matchup really come down to, and I wrote about this on The Athletic, it could come down to which duo is better. Talked to Jackson about that. Not about necessarily this game deciding that, but he was like, yeah, me and DK care about being the best duo. We got respect for Jordan. We got respect for Justin. They both know both of those guys, but they're like, we're better. We're the best receivers in the world. We believe we're one of one. So I was like, all right, cool. That's great. Everyone should think that. I think this matchup will come down to that because I know Justin and Jordan, I don't know them personally, but I imagine they think the same thing, that they're the best, over there. So I wrote about that. That matchup, dove into the numbers a little bit, mentioned how big of a deal this is. That DK, this Puck, DK has 2 red zone catches all year. I didn't peep that. 2 red zone catches on 7 targets.
Not even possible. It's just
2.
not possible.
One of them was in week 2, and then one of them was in week 6, and then he didn't get his foot down on a touchdown in week 6 against the Niners. So it could have been 3, but like that's it. He has no red zone touchdowns this year. None. That's just inexplicable. Jamar Chase has like 7 red zone touchdowns, So I think that matchup's going to be huge. And then Riq, yeah, I mean, Mike Macdonald said it. He said we can't double everybody every time. So somebody's just got to man up and win. And he's going to trust his guy. I'm glad we talked about Riq because that'll be him. And then we talked a little bit about what I'm talking about now on our Seahawks Man-to-Man podcast, available everywhere with the homie Alec Lewis, who covers the Vikings for The Athletic. Does a great job. So yeah, we're getting really into the preview-ish content this week. I feel like it's warranted. This is a huge game, and there's matchups that are going to decide it, and it comes down to some high-profile guys on the Seahawks: JSN, DK, Geno, Riq.
It's gonna be fun. All right, we got to connect next week. We got to figure out the time that works best because the holidays. We'll do that. But best happy holidays to you, to the family, and all that. We'll chat next week. Seahawks Vikings coming up on Sunday. Again, follow Mike on all the platforms: Blue Sky, Twitter, Mike Dugar, The Athletic, and again the Seahawks Man-to-Man podcast. Check out this full episode on YouTube. When you're there, please like and subscribe there, and also check it out on Apple and Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. And always up at pucksports.com. We'll see you next week, Mike. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Go Cougs.
Oh, go Cougs.